Hello guys, how are you?
I'm Hardeep Singh. Welcome back to your own YouTube channel. IELTS updates and recent exams. For more updates related to recent IELTS exam writing test topics, listening, reading, practice test, and speaking, you got guesswork. Please, guys, participate in everyday listening and reading practice test to achieve your desired band score in your actual IELTS exam. Please hit the like and subscribe button. Press the bell icon for the upcoming notifications. Don't forget like, subscribe and share my YouTube channel and my Facebook page, IELTS updates and recent exams.
Part 1.
You will hear a talk between a customer and a travel agent. First, you have some time to
Look at questions 1 to 4.
Good morning. I'd like to book a flight to Toronto, please.
Certainly. Flying from Sydney?
Yes, on Thursday, please.
Thursday the 16th, right? There are 3 flights that day. Do you prefer flying with any particular airline?
I've heard that Air Canada is good, but expensive. Is there a big difference in prices between the airlines? I'll be flying business class.
Yes, there is. Air Canada is the most expensive airline at $4,000 to $6,000 for business class, depending on the date of return. Qantas is $3,000 to $6,000, and Pacific, the budget airline, charges between $2,000 and $3,500.
Wow, that's quite a difference in prices. I'm returning on from Wednesday 22nd, so could you check the return prices for me?
Sure. Let me just enter the return date into the computer. OK. Air Canada has tickets for $4,600. Qantas has them for $4,200. Pacific has tickets for $3,200. Those prices all include taxes and surcharges.
Okay.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 5 to 10.
Before I make a decision, I would like to know the departure and arrival times in both directions.
Of course. Let's look at Air Canada first. Leaves Sydney at 10 a.m. and arrives in Toronto at 10 a.m. local time. There's a stopover in Vancouver. The Qantas flight leaves Sydney at 1:45 and arrives at 10:15 a.m. There's also a stopover in Vancouver, but it's shorter than the Air Canada one. Pacific flies via Los Angeles and leaves at 6:15, arriving at 11:55 p.m.
Oh, that doesn't sound very convenient. Flying by Pacific, I mean.
Well, budget airlines do offer cheaper tickets, but they are often not so advantageous in other ways.
How about the returned flights?
Let me check. The Air Canada flight leaves Toronto at 4 o'clock and arrives at 6 o'clock local time. The Qantas flight leaves at 9 a.m. and arrives at 11 a.m. local time in Sydney. The Pacific flight leaves Toronto at 10:25 and arrives at 6:10 local time in Sydney. Again, not very convenient timing.
No, it isn't. Are the stopovers the same as on the outward journey?
Yes, they are.
Well, I have a business appointment on Wednesday the 22nd in the morning, so unfortunately I can't take the Qantas flight. The Pacific flight times are too inconvenient, so I'll take the Air Canada flight, even though it's more expensive.
Right, I'll book that for you, shall I? Do you have your passport with you?
Yes, I do. Here you are.
Thank you. I'll just enter your details. OK. Could you just check this printout? Make sure that I've spelt your name correctly and have written your passport number correctly too. Will you be paying by credit card?
Yes, I have a company credit card. Here you are. Oh, my name is Reese with a C, not with an S.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll correct that. R-E-E-C-E.
And my given names are hyphenated. Mary-Ann, with an E. Oh, you've got that. Sorry.
OK. Mary-Ann. Joined together with a hyphen. Is the passport number OK?
Yes. Could you give me an official invoice, please? I need it for my company.
Certainly. Shall I use the company name as it appears on the credit card, ABC Stocks?
Yes.
OK, thank you. Could you sign here and here? Thank you. I'll just print out your ticket.
Thank you.
That is the end of part 1.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 2.
You will hear a monologue.
First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 17.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am here to give you a talk on tenancy agreements and other legalities. If you rent a flat or a house or bedsit, you will have a tenancy agreement or lease. This is a written legal agreement between you, the tenant, and the property owner, the landlord. Tenancy agreements should normally contain information about the amount of rent, the length of the tenancy, and what rights you and your landlord will have under the law. In most cases, you will have an assured short-hold tenancy, which means that your landlord cannot ask you to leave without a good reason during the first 6 months. Although these rights offer you some protection, it is still your responsibility to check the tenancy agreement thoroughly and make sure you agree with the terms. Do not sign the tenancy agreement if you do not know what all of it means. If you do not fully understand your rights, show your tenancy agreement to an advisor in the accommodation office or student welfare office at your university or college and ask for help. You can also get help from a housing advice centre, law centre, or citizens advice bureau. When you do sign the tenancy agreement, make sure you get a copy to keep for yourself, in case you need to check any details later on. The landlord may also ask you to sign an inventory, a list of all the items in the property, pieces of furniture, kitchen items, etc. If so, make sure you get a copy of this as well. Check that it is correct and that any existing damage to these items is included before signing it. If your landlord does not provide an inventory, you should make one yourself and send a copy to the landlord. Let's take a look at payments. Before you move into private accommodation, you will probably be asked to pay a deposit equivalent to 1 month's rent. Make sure you get a receipt for any deposit or fees you have paid. When you leave the accommodation, if you have paid all your bills and caused no damage to the property, your full deposit will be paid back to you. If you are renting through an accommodation agency, you may also be asked to pay fees for preparing tenancy agreements and administration. You should also keep a written record of all the rent payments that you make, as you make them. If you have a dispute with your landlord, or you get behind with your rent, you should get advice as soon as possible.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 18 to 20.
Remember that if you live in the same building as your landlord, or you have a room in a student or youth hostel, or university college accommodation, then this will affect how secure your tenancy will be. If you do not share any living space with the landlord or a member of their family, apart from means of access like an entrance hall or a staircase, or are a student living in halls of residence, or any other type of accommodation where an educational institution is the landlord, you will have basic protection from eviction. Your landlord will have to end your tenancy first, either by waiting for the end of the fixed term you agreed for the tenancy, or by giving you at least 4 weeks written notice in writing to quit, or through getting a court order. Before you have to leave. If you share living space, for example a kitchen, living room or bathroom, with your landlord or are in a student or youth hostel, you will be what is termed an excluded tenant, which means that you are outside the protection of the UK law which regulates tenancies and will not have security of tenure. All the landlord has to do to evict you is to give you notice, although they must give you a reasonable amount of time in which to leave. If you have problems with accommodation, contact the accommodation office or students' union at your university or college. If you need specialist or legal help, contact a law centre in your local Citizens Advice Bureau who will be able to tell you your rights as a tenant and the rights of your landlord.
That is the end of part 2.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 3.
You will hear two students, Brian and Emily, talking about penguins, the subject of their current assignment. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 24.
So, Brian, how have you been doing with your reading on penguins?
Not too bad, Emily. And you?
Yeah, okay. I hadn't realised there were so many differences between the various types of penguin.
No, nor had I. Anyway, I started with the Gen 2.
And me with the rockhopper.
And it turns out they're rather cautious.
Not scared of swimming, I trust.
Oh no, but they don't like going about at night. Scared of the dark, I suppose. And if they're climbing over some rocky landscape, they'll only jump if they have to. And even then, they'll look carefully down and spend time deciding whether to or not. Is that common?
I don't think so. The rockhopper will have a quick look if it's somewhere they haven't dropped down before, but they don't seem timid. In fact, they're pretty determined. And if they're trying to get up somewhere, they grip onto the stones with their slightly hooked bills, as well as their nails when the surface gets very steep. Nothing stops them.
Interesting. Because the other type I looked into, the Magellanic, tend to stick to the beach rather than going inland. So you see them walking along with their flippers at their sides or a bit forward. If they come across something they haven't seen before, they cock their head first to one side, then the other, peering out of each eye in turn, as if they don't quite believe anything until they've double-checked it. And then, when they call to each other about anything, they arch their backs strangely first, before making a very loud noise indeed.
Oh, because the king penguin stands very upright when it calls. And they have the longest flippers, which they hold towards the ground, as if they're worried about falling over. But it's quite dignified too. I think they're my favourite type.
Uh-huh. Now you have some time to look at questions 25 to 30.
Anyway, there are some things that they all do the same, aren't there?
Oh, yes. Eating fish, for example.
Well, of course. But sleeping, say?
Yes. Occasionally you might see one stretched out flat in the sun for a snooze.
But normally you see them standing at night, even though they're sound asleep.
It seems odd, doesn't it? And then they're all liable to get aggressive if they feel invaded, aren't they?
Yeah, not quite so sweet then. And with the rockhopper...
The one with the distinctive black and yellow feathers on its head.
That's the one. If it gets annoyed about something, then the black feathers on the head point upwards and the yellow feathers stick out. It all makes it look bigger or tougher.
I wonder how often they get annoyed.
Well, I don't know about annoyed, but they've plenty to get frightened of. They've got predators in the water and on land, well, in the sky anyway.
Oh, yes, the great skewer bird. It's after the eggs.
So the penguins have to keep a careful watch for the skewer all the time, especially when they're nesting.
They can spot the white patches in its wings, can't they, as one flies over?
Yes, and then they sit very closely on the eggs to protect them.
Not an easy life, really.
No. So what else have we found out?
Well, I was interested to see that although they nest individually, they always go into the sea together, in large numbers.
Even though it might make them more obvious to predators.
That's the price to pay for the best way to find food. It means a bigger catch from each trip.
I see. I watched a video too, just showing them on the beach, and I was struck by how calm they seemed to be. I thought they might have looked frightened.
Perhaps it's because there are so many of them. Maybe that gives them a sense of security. In fact, all the types have a social nature.
I guess that's why we humans find them so fascinating to observe.
I guess so. So, shall we start to put all our notes together? And then I think we ought to...
That is the end of part 3.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 4.
You will hear part of a lecture about issues involved in the management of the growth of cities. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40.
Now, a key issue in the ability of cities to grow is the question of housing. However, quality is as important as quantity here. But that isn't to say that this is easy to guarantee, and the development, or at least the spread, of many modern cities is marked by the sprawl of slum or shantytown housing. Governments are, of course, keen to address this, but the tendency to demolish them has often proved disastrous, as it doesn't solve the problem unless satisfactory replacements are ready for the inhabitants. What I'm saying is that suitable housing projects have to be lined up to accommodate these otherwise displaced people. And suitable is the key word here. All too frequently, there isn't real consultation, only token gestures. If the residents aren't fully involved, they are unlikely to find the resulting development appropriate to their needs. People need to feel reasonably independent, and strategies for providing accommodation schemes work much better if an approach rooted in self-help is applied. People value things more when they have been part of bringing them into being. At the same time, residents can't do everything for themselves, or not well enough anyway, and so governments need to accept that a number of services will always have to be laid on. These would include electricity and water and so on. From the other side, residents need to feel able to commit. Migrants are essential to the growth of cities, bringing rapid increases in population, skills and income. but they need to have a sense of security, of long-term commitment to the city, if they are to invest money in building or buying houses. Developing this sense of commitment isn't straightforward, and it takes time. It's complex and involves several factors. People need to feel they belong, and unfortunately too many governments fail to appreciate that community values are a crucial component of that. Sadly, there are too many housing schemes which don't work. People drift away, or the whole place becomes crime-ridden. It's easy to be wise after the event, but it is worrying that a lot of housing is put up without analysis having been carried out to examine how much employment is going to be available for people. But I don't want to labour the negatives too hard. Such difficulties as there are challenges, and challenges that can be, and often are, overcome. And cities are, I believe, a good thing. Urbanisation, the process of developing cities and the societies that comprise them, may not be everyone's dream, but it has a huge impact on the economy, and also benefits each and every person's freedom. Furthermore, the sheer volume of people means that work can be differently distributed. In villages, people need to be multi-skilled in order to be autonomous, but in cities, you can see the evolution of a variety of specialist activities, and this means people live in a more sophisticated way. It's not only tangible phenomena. There are all sorts of other equally important benefits too. Residing in cities brings us face to face with many different ways of thinking or going about things, and this increases our degree of understanding, something which is hard to measure in scientific terms, but which surely makes better people of us all. Right, well, now I'd like to turn our attention to the suburbs.
That is the end of part 4.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
So guys, don't forget like, subscribe and share my YouTube channel and my Facebook page, IELTS updates and recent exams. For more updates related to recent IELTS exam writing test topics, listening, reading, practice test and speaking, you got guesswork. Please guys, participate in everyday new IELTS listening and reading practice tests to achieve your desired band score in your actual IELTS exam. For more IELTS material, visit my official website www.ieltsupdatesandrecentexams.com. The link is given below in the description. If you need PDF files of latest IELTS material, then please join my Telegram channel. So guys, please write your score below the comment section. Again, thanks for listening. God bless you all guys. Stay tuned, stay safe.